Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to Predatory Exotics. Today's video is 10 top tips for your next reptile show. So the premise of this video today is basically going to be whether this is your first reptile show or your 5th or your 10th reptile show, you'll probably learn a few things from this video. So we're going to probably do the first 5 are going to be before you leave for your reptile show, and then the next 5 are going to be while you're at the reptile show. So stick around and learn what to do to have the best experience possible. So let's get into it with tip number 1. So before you even think about going to the reptile show, you need to consider the animals you already have. We tend to travel quite far to our reptile shows. Sometimes it can take us a couple days to do the round trip. So that means we need to make sure on at least the day before we have done all the waters, all the feeding, all the possible things we can do. And if you're going for a bit longer, make sure you've got someone to hang around so they can check on your animals while you're away. So let's move on to tip number 2. So the next thing you want to do is simply have a think. Have a think about the possible animals you would like to pick up at the reptile show. You can't make plans for every single animal, so just make a short list of a few, maybe a couple snakes, maybe a lizard or two, and then have a think, make that short list, because then when you find it, you'll know they're the one. Moving on to tip number 3. So the next one is actually housing. You've got to think before you even get an animal, do you have the appropriate housing for that animal? So you need to make sure you either have tanks set up, you have tubs ready to go, you have all the necessary heating and lighting equipment. So make sure you have appropriate housing for that short list of animals that you created in the last tip. Swiftly moving on to tip number 4. So the next tip is making sure you have an appropriate travel container for your reptile. The reptiles and amphibians obviously are going to come in tubs when you pick them up at the show, but something like this polystyrene box is great for regulating the temperature. If you go in the winter, you might want to add a heat pack to this and add some more ventilation holes if it is summer. Obviously you can have ventilation holes anyway, but these are great for traveling long distances with your reptiles, and they're going to be much safer in this insulated box. On to the last one before you leave, tip number 5. So the next tip is pack your bags. Make sure you have snacks for the queue, water for the long day. It's going to be very hot inside the venue. Make sure you've packed your bags and leave enough room for the reptile pickups that you are going to get. Also, if you're like us and you tend to like to film the stuff, vlog it, make sure you have an extra camera bag. You can see we have to carry all this extra camera equipment, so we're going to be taking 2 rucksacks. So let's get on to tip number 6. So what you need to remember with these shows is cash is king. All the vendors pretty much only take cash at most of the shows. The card machines don't really like using them, and also if you try and get cash out at the venue, they will charge you to get cash out. So make sure before you leave or before you get to the venue, you've got enough cash for all the possible pickups that you might get. Next one on the list is tip number 7. So the next tip, as you can see from the footage, is the queue gets very long. Make sure you get to the venue early. Depending on what reptile show you go to, we are specifically going to one that opens at 10:15. So you need to make sure you're probably there at least an hour before the doors open, so that when you get in, you are one of the first people that get an opportunity to get the reptile you want. Moving on to tip number 8. So the next tip might sound a bit odd, but it is don't browse if you're looking for specific species. It can get very overwhelming with the amount of species that you can see on all of the tables there. But if you're not looking for corn snakes, ball pythons, leopard geckos, move on and try and find the stuff that you really want in your collection. We're almost at the end. Tip number 9. So the next tip is very important. It is don't impulse buy your reptiles. I can't stress this enough. You need to think about, is this the animal you really want, or are you just excited to be at the show and excited to get a new animal? So you need to consider, is this the animal for you? Can you keep up with its care requirements and also its future housing? Is this animal going to get larger, and are you going to be able to keep it for the rest of its life? Last but not least, number 10. So slightly contradicting the last tip, the next one is don't hesitate. If you see an animal that you've been wanting for years and years and years, and you've prepared for it and you have everything ready, make sure you just go for it. A few years ago, we found this rough scale sand boa, and man, it was an absolute dream to find, and I didn't hesitate, I bought it. And the one thing to note is, if you find it at the very start of the show, don't worry about it, you can pay for it, and most of the vendors will keep it behind their table until you're ready to go home. So make sure you have fun, and I hope you find an awesome snake like we did. Bonus tip number 11. So the next tip is slightly funny, but altogether serious. It is make sure you wear...
No, because it's true. No.
Make sure you wear it.
Make sure you
wear it.
Okay? I think we can only pick up on your mic.
But all jokes aside, it is actually serious. A lot of people moan on the reptile grips if you ever go on Facebook. It's a very confined area. It gets very sweaty. It gets very hot. Make sure you put on deodorant because you don't want to be the person that they are talking about in the groups on Facebook. Wear deodorant, smell nice, you'll be good for the whole day. So at the end of the day, remember to have fun at whatever reptile show you're going to. Hopefully I'll see you there. But for now, have a good day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.